Between the wars, 1920s and the 1930s, between World War I and World War II. After World War I, Europe had a very difficult time trying to keep the peace. European nations avoided alliances and the balance of power policies that had helped cause World War I. You can see here a review of World War I, the Alliance powers in green, and the Triple Entente powers in orange. They believed in collective security. The League of Nations, which was formed after World War I to help prevent future wars, failed. The US and Russia did not join the League, and so it was not strong enough to stop any major disputes that were coming up, especially within Germany. And so it did a lot of talking, the League of Nations, but it did not have any teeth or any muscle to actually stop them from bullying and to stop Germany from messing with other countries. The Locarno Pact was an agreement that eased tension between Germany and the Eastern European countries. There was another agreement, a pact, called the Kellogg-Briand Pact, which was an agreement signed by 62 nations stating that war should not be part of national policy. So basically, 63 nations came together and said, listen, we are not going to actively start wars. Unfortunately, as we know, this did not hold true. A peace built on quicksand is a very famous quote. And it is, as you can see from the cartoon there, you have the snake, and the snake is known as for being a kind of untrustworthy animal. Okay, an untrustworthy animal. It shows here, following World War I, the Treaty of Versailles creates feelings of bitterness on both sides. And the snake is kind of the international strife. You can see it's labeled international conflict. And there you have the League of Nations as the cute little fluffy bunny, and we know that snakes eat bunnies, and so the bunny really doesn't have a chance. The Treaty of Versailles left the German people feeling very bitter and very betrayed after, because they were forced to take the full responsibility and blame for the war, which you remember they did not actually start. Some former colonies throughout Europe, Africa, and Southeast Asia were very angry because they did not become independent. They thought after World War I they would become independent from their mother countries. That did not happen. Britain, post-World War I, was in an economic, basically down. British trade decreased in the 1920s. 40% of British merchant ships were destroyed by German subs during World War I. And there was very high taxes on imports, which are known as tariffs, which were high after the war. After World War I, basically the United States was the one country that was helping to rebuild Europe. You're going to see this also after World War II. So the United States, we were making some very good business in the 1920s. Our economy was booming because we were helping to rebuild France and England and other European countries. Unfortunately, that did not last long. Unemployment reached 25% in Europe in 1921, especially in Britain and in Germany. Germany was even higher. Britain had to borrow billions from the U.S. during World War I, and they could not get it back. They could not ever repay those loans. Now, during this time, Ireland, which had been controlled by the British, wanted independence. Okay, and in 1916 there was an Irish nationalist. Remember, a nationalist is someone who loves their country. They wanted to be an independent Ireland away from British control, and there was a rebellion, which they call the Easter Rebellion because it happened on Easter. It did not work. The British were very quickly squashed it, but Ireland was controlled by Britain for many years. Today it's independent, but there's a very tight connection between the two countries. The Irish Republican Army, the IRA, basically became created during this time period. They used a lot of guerrilla war tactics against the British. These two pictures here are more modern pictures from the 1960s and 70s, but there were always an underground movement to kick the British out of Ireland, and unfortunately they used very violent tactics. France post-World War I, the Western Front, which is the western edge of France, was completely destroyed. 10 million acres of farmland was gone. 20,000 factories were bombed and burnt out. The French government eventually built heavy fortifications along the German border. This became known as the Maginot Line. And you can see there in the picture, there's an example of one of the fortifications. Today, you can visit them as tourist attractions. You can walk through them. They're basically partially underground bunkers, and they would have very heavy machinery, machine guns, rocket launcher type idea there. This way that if Germany ever got fresh again, ever decided to come and attack France, France would be prepared. The French had a very hard time ever getting trust back in the German people. Now, the building of these fortifications helped to keep unemployment low, but unfortunately it led to inflation, and that unemployment is going to skyrocket back up once the fortifications have been built, because then there's no more jobs. Germany after World War I was severely punished. The Versailles Treaty was incredibly harsh against Germany, which you have seen in our previous lessons. All right, Germany was forced to take full acceptance of the war, even though they did not start the war, and it put them in a horrible condition where they never could get better. They really could not improve themselves because of the conditions of the Treaty of Versailles. By the early 1920s, Germany had trouble paying reparations. Reparations are money for the destruction that the Germans did to all the other countries during the war. They're basically, you're paying for what you destroyed in the war. Germany's reparations literally did not get paid off till last year, the year 2014. That is when Germany made their last reparation payment for World War I. So that lets you know how much they were charged in paying for the damage they did to all the European countries and the U.S. during World War I, that they just paid it off 100 years later. They began to print money to help pay people, and unfortunately, when the more money you print, the less that money has value, and so the money wasn't worth the paper it was printed on. You can see there the man is pushing a big cart full of German money, paper marks they're called, instead of dollars, they're marks. And there's a very famous picture there of the kids using the money as blocks. They're playing with the money because it's not worth anything, and it's a toy to them. German workers in the French-occupied Ruhr Valley refused to work. They called this passive resistance because they felt they were being used as slaves. Eventually, in 1925, the French are going to withdraw from that area, and the Dawes Plan was introduced to basically lower the amount of reparations so Germany and the rest of Europe could pay, what they had to pay. All of this is going to lay the groundwork for Hitler to take over in Germany, because German people were suffering so horribly, did not have proper food, jobs, money, the bare essentials you need to survive, that they're going to be desperate. And so when Hitler does start to speak and does start to say, this is my plan, they're gonna hold him to it. They're going to believe him because they've got nothing else to lose.